now. Hi, Dr. Rob.
Tammy, always a pleasure. Good to see you.
Likewise, and yeah, grateful to see you. I know it was like,
Hey, Tammy, would you make me dinner? I'm really hungry. Do you have
yeah,
time
we're
for
in
that?
different states, so
I
never
know,
mind.
but you
So,
get FedEx. Okay,
yeah.
let's go.
My partner told me he isn't attracted to my body, but he's attracted to my face. He also said he's attracted to me in so many other ways, which is why he's in a relationship. But the physical part has never changed for him in the 2.5 years we've been together. He always thought because of his porn addiction, he just needed to get sober and it would change over time. He's been 6 months sober and it still hasn't changed for him. He's attracted physically to bodies in his addiction. People in the program advised him to lie and not disclose that he's not attracted to my body.
Lovely,
But he
lovely.
said he feels like a ton of shame about the issue and he does not want to lie about it anymore. So he finally told me, can this issue be worked through in our relationship? Can he be aroused by my body over time with more sobriety? This is, thank you. What a vulnerable question. So thank you for asking this. I can imagine how devastating it was to hear him tell you his truth in the moment. So yeah, I'm
And
grateful
good
you're
for
here.
him for not listening. And honesty is what it's all about.
Yeah,
So whether it's
yeah.
especially honesty in the face of discomfort,
Hmm.
I mean, what he did was be intimate with you, whether you liked hearing it or not. And boy, is that a really good part of recovery. So, Tom, you just said I don't hear anything. I hear porn addiction. Okay. But we talk about this a lot in terms of different kinds of ways to get to arousal and what sex is. So,
Hmm.
do you want to mention that, or I will start.
No, I think you're the clinical sexologist. So, I mean, they're at, 6 months of him not acting out.
Right.
And, can he be aroused by my
Right.
body over time with more sobriety? So, yeah.
Right. So, a couple of things for you. First of all, I think that, again, as Tammy said, it's brave to ask this question. Um, you have to understand as a sex addict, what I can tell you is that I am used to a constant stream of new bodies, new experiences. The way I'm aroused is, oh, look at that porn image, and look at that porn image. In other words, it's a constant stream of different people, different ages. So what turns me on and what I'm used to being turned on for Lord knows how long is new, uh, exciting, never seen it before, and all of that. So when I begin to be sexual with a partner, it's different, and as I would say most respectfully, I've seen that butt before. We've been together for a while, and your body is familiar to me. Staying across the room, I know what you look like. I've touched you before. So, and this may or may not make sense, but what turns me on has to come from a completely different place inside of me. And so rather than being, ooh, that's really hot, I want that, that's like an addict. It's choosing intensity. What we're talking about is intimacy, and intimate sexuality does not come from, ooh, you're really hot, I can't wait to be with you. It comes out of the development of connection. And I can tell you as a sex addict, just in my own recovery, and I'll be really honest with you, that for me, what turns me on is massage, is touching, is lying next to each other, is kissing. Oh, I got aroused. Wow, didn't expect that. And then actually, I think the sex is better, the best sex I've ever had, because there's a sense of comfort, just being present. So when I think of a sex addict saying what he's saying, what I think of is he's choosing intensity. Wow, that's intense. That's exciting. I want some of that. So he's with you, and it's like, why aren't I feeling that, amazing rush that I feel like when I'm looking at porn? And the truth is, he never will, because it comes from a completely different place of our minds and our arousal process. I can be in my bed with my partner, and I would rather read the New York Times, this is true, or the Wall Street Journal, or whatever you read, than be sexual. Uh, However, if I'm willing to, and I think, what is the word a friend of mine said? Sex with a partner is about willingness, being willing to touch, being willing to be close, being willing to see what happens, being willing to be honest and say, I'm not aroused in the moment, or I am. That's where it comes from. We're not used to this. We don't even think it's possible. So I have to put down that paper. There's not still paper anymore. I have to put that down and say, I'm willing to look you in the eyes. I'm going to put down what's important to me, and I'm going to focus on you. And guess what? We get aroused. Never expected it, never thought it would happen. But if I looked at you and said, oh, I can't wait to get that erection, look at this, it's just not going to happen. So I think we look at you from a completely different perspective, which we're not used to. Um, I'll say one other thing. I think we are very avoidant, and sexuality is one of the ways that we can feel very vulnerable. It almost feels it's counterintuitive because as a sex addict, you think, wow, sex, exciting, can't wait to have it. But with an intimate partner, it's more difficult. It's more challenging. It's in some ways scary because no sex worker or no porn can let me down, hurt me, or disappoint me, but you can. And so basically the bottom line is that I don't think it has to not be performative. Um, the other thing I would say for a man is, am I getting an erection? Am I hard enough? Is it exciting enough? Are they happy with me? I don't think they realize that care. I don't care about that as your partner. What I care about is do you want to touch me? Do you want to be with me? Do you want to be me to hold you? Um, so there's a lot of different pieces in here. I would love, Tammy, for you to briefly talk about a little bit about that sensate focus piece, which is what I'm talking about, and then we can
Mhm.
kind of move on. I know we have lots of questions
Yeah.
tonight.
Well, and we talk often about sensate focused touch, which is about touch and not with the goal of we're going to have sex. But I was thinking when Dr. Rob was talking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, like everything you see in images online is a certain way, and you can get, like you can get it honed into exactly what you think you want. And I was like, no real body ever looks like those things. And guess what? Like, I mean, I was looking at old pictures the other day. I don't look the same. Nothing looks the same, and it doesn't matter. But it is not about
Tammy,
just
you
the
look the
visual.
same to me, and I've known you 30
And I'm
years.
going to say with
You,
clothes on,
I mean,
it's
from
still
here up.
okay. But yes, exactly. So, but, and I don't, yeah, but it's one of those things where, yeah, that doesn't matter. Like it's the aging together, like, yeah, everything looks different. But it doesn't matter. It's, because we are intimate and vulnerable and care about each other. That's what matters. And so, yeah, I like Dr. Rob said, I do appreciate, that he was willing to be honest with you. And I would ask that he consider, like, what other ways is he willing to be intimate and vulnerable, because that's really what it's about. So the sensate focused touch, it might be massaging feet. It might be, it can be laying in bed next to each other with clothes on. I mean, like there's a whole bunch of different stages of this. It's not just about, from zero to intercourse. It's the whole thing. And if you're only focused on the external package, like that's not who the person is, and that obviously changes. So it's one of those things where also understanding, I really appreciate, your personality and all of these great qualities. And then if as he's thinking about things, instead of just seeing with his, I think of the my little eyes, I'm seeing with my whole vision of who you truly are and who you are as a person, not just objectifying you, which is what, if I'm just looking at body parts and things like that, that's objectification. So as he is doing this work, the more he leans into it, and with sponsors that do want honesty, that would be important. But it's one of those things where I do think he will start to appreciate, everything about you, not just, well, that isn't my ideals. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I'll keep this quick, but they were talking about, they didn't think the AI was a problem because it wasn't a real person. I said, I bet your partner wasn't thinking the same thing. Oh no. And I was like, you just created something that is your absolute ideal. No human can possibly, measure up to that. And you're in the mistaken belief that, oh, well, it's okay because it isn't a real person. No, it's, it doesn't matter. So that's a long answer. Yes, it can change. And if you guys are looking for ways to connect in really meaningful ways and be vulnerable, you know, and when we're very early in recovery, we are very emotionally immature. And this feels like he's being honest, but he's also, fixated on a vision. Everything needs
Body
to look a certain
parts.
way. And I'm thinking, and I've seen, no offense, some of the guys that think that they need this ideal body parts and all this, and I'm going like,
What did they look like?
exactly. I was like, so anyway,
I want to
but I'm
add one
sorry for
thing.
you. I like, I can imagine this is very hurtful to you, as the partner. But please.
I want to add something very concrete, and I hope this leaves people feeling comfortable. Is that maybe the goal is to arouse you? Maybe the goal is not about him at all, but for you to
Great
be
idea.
together and for him to focus on your pleasure and your excitement. And I know in part as a sex addict, it's very arousing to me to watch my partner get aroused. And so maybe the focus isn't it happening? Are you attracted to me? But maybe the focus is, can you make me feel sexually aroused, excited? Are you interested in taking that focus on me? That is a really kind of simple way to begin to start make that happen.
So the next one, I have several questions, but I'll start with one. I am the betrayed partner of a PA 4.5 months from D-Day, discovered that this has been present my entire marriage. I understand two aspects of healing. Dealing with the emotions or of triggers is one way, and dealing with the pain of the betrayal itself. I am suffering from a lot of negative thoughts about my 22-year marriage and how to reframe or shift my thoughts from negative, like it's all tainted memories, are not real, etc., to more positive. I understand positive when it comes to self-talk, but positive when it comes to the relationship. I can't figure that out. Do you want to start with that one? Because there's a second question. You're muted. Your lips are moving.
That's because I'm eating crackers and I don't want a
Mm,
cracker. To me, there's something very concrete here, which is 4 months.
yeah.
I mean, 4 months is, I can't imagine looking at someone who betrayed me, who violated my trust, who's been looking at other people without feeling incredibly uncomfortable. And so I think that, let me go look at your question again. I want to make sure I've got this right. Um, I I don't think that you can separate the emotions from your connection to your intimacy. So to expect yourself to be in a different place or to even shift to a different place, I think is being unfair to yourself. And I also work with a lot of partners who they want the closeness to come back. They want to feel the way they felt, or they want to, but wanting that doesn't mean that that's going to happen. And so to me, and Tammy, I think will agree with this, really putting a focus on being patient with yourself. I don't know if you're talking to other women, and I assume you're a woman who is going through this. I think that you might listen to the woman who is a little further along. Maybe she's 6 months or a year, and see that her feelings about her partner have shifted. I was going to add one more thing. Um, yeah, Tammy, why don't you go ahead? And I know there's something else in my head. I'll write it down when it comes up.
So I'm typing furiously. Uh, okay, so I'm going to hit send. So Debbie McCrae is so good at practical steps. I demonstrated. She did stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it, stop it on one of the webinars, and I had some looping thought. I can't even remember what it was, and I did that for I don't know 30 seconds. I don't remember what it was, but like that stopped it. So she talks about journaling, she talks about breathing, she talks about lots of things that can help in the moment. And then so there's the immediate, she calls it her emergency kit, and you have those
Mm,
things that you can interrupt the thoughts in the moment. And then there's the longer haul, like Dr. Rob was saying, you're new into this. If you haven't already done so, I put the the betrayed partner work group started last week, I think Tuesday. I'll have to look. But you could still join that. We'd have to add you manually, but that is such great content, and you will have tools to use, to learn to navigate this space. But as Dr. Robs, of course, you're wondering, was anything real? Yes, it wasn't all a lie. There's compartmentalized behavior. This is not like you have to take a crash course in all of these things. So, but the more you learn, like we've done webinars on, sex addiction 101, podcasts on sex addiction 101 or porn addiction 101. So you'll have an idea of like this, nothing you did or didn't do caused this. That does not mean that there wasn't, reality throughout. And then there were lies and compartmentalization. So it's the paradox of, does he love me? Yes, he does. And he still did these things. But these addictions are not, sex and porn addiction aren't about sex or porn, just like alcoholism is not about how good alcohol tastes. It's a maladaptive coping mechanism. It lets me numb out and escape, uncomfortable thoughts. It also makes me numb out and miss good things too. But, that's kind of one of the unexpected, natural consequences of it. So you having things in the moment that will help you regulate. Erin, on alternating with Dr. Robbins, Erin Snow, and she's talked on webinars before. She's the clinical director of our program, and she's a betrayed partner. And she worked really hard at um, staying regulated. That was key. And she shared things. You can find that on the link that I shared as well. So stay regulated and understand you won't always feel this way. And like Dr. Rob said, you're 4.5 months in. And so he knew all along. You just found out. So that's the difference. I'm reaching for my glasses on top of my head and they were next to me. Okay,
And that
go
means take a
ahead.
breath. I
I
wanted to
know.
say something, and Tammy, this never occurred to me all the time we've been doing this, that when you put something in the chat that people are listening to it as a podcast, they don't know what you're putting in. And so I
Yes, I
want to
do. I
say to,
say it.
oh, okay. Well,
Well,
everything's on seeking
with a
integrity.
podcast, yeah, theoretically. So yes, if this gets created into a podcast, and they don't all, but
So
if you're on YouTube, you actually can see those things. I think so.
everything is on seekingintegrity.com. Every podcast, I'm sorry, every piece of work that we do. And I really encourage anyone who's listening and doesn't have access to Tammy's wisdom, that all of these people she's talking about and the work that they do with us is all there. Um,
I do get a
okay.
lot of emails saying you said something, and so people do reach out and ask for that. Okay, part two of the question. I understand recovery is moving towards the addict's true, authentic self. If their acting out has been 40 years in the making, how can he know what is his true self? Could his current character be his true self, or is this character one that has been destroyed by addiction and the true character is actually something better than that can be uncovered? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. If he's going to meetings and 12 step, I'm a big 12 step fan, and we talk about that. The promises come true if we're doing the housekeeping, which is steps 4 through 9. So you will find, yes, this compartmentalized version, we learn to be congruent. We learn to show up. Uh, so 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 this is the addicted person version of him who has maladaptive coping mechanisms, who is lying and escaping and everything else, and probably full of shame and guilt, but and it may manifest in different ways. But if he does the work, yes, I will be shocked if you don't see, if he's really doing the work, that by the time he even hits 12 months of sobriety, that you're going like, yeah, this is a different version. And recovery takes 2 to 5 years. So you guys are really early. You're making progress, and he would get chips for all that, and you're still going, and he betrayed me. So but Dr. Rob, thoughts?
Well, there's two. I mean, and they're kind of different from each
Okay.
other, which is one, um, we have a program that follows our residential program. So if you go through treatment, you don't just disappear from us and we from you. We work with the guys who are interested every single day for a period of time. It's called a virtual step down. And the reason I'm mentioning this is I show up for them every week and I talk to them and I engage them. And Tammy, I have to tell you, and this morning in particular, the sense of pride that I felt, uh, the meaning that watching these men grow, it just really makes me feel grateful for what we do. And one of the things I saw today was I saw a man last week and he was saying he didn't know how to get through to his wife and he couldn't convince her that he felt better and that he couldn't, and we talked about what empathy was, and that compassion for her would mean just listening and just being curious what she was going through. So I'm sure he didn't do that perfectly, but he had a big grin on his face when I met him this week. And I said, "How are things going?" He said, "We're closer. We're talking more. We're more engaged." So there was a profound shift. He went through treatment. He's been working on himself. I'm not saying my words made the big difference, but there's a whole process. So this is Tammy's point. I think that profound change can take place. And I, he was like, this is a whole new world. It never occurred to me, so it is almost like developmental. There are pieces of relating to people and engaging to people, understanding where they're coming from that we just never learned when we were younger. However, um, we are who we are. And I don't know what you mean by character, but I can tell you today, if I'm busy, I don't have time for you. And then I think, oh, right, I shouldn't say that. In other words, it may not be automatic for me to always be, or even regularly, to be the compassionate and engaged. It just like my addiction, my negative ways of interacting and thinking, they'll always come up first for me. But the work that Tammy's talking about allows me to take that step back and say, wait a minute, I didn't like that I said that, or look at my partner's face, that wasn't received well. Or, I asked him what was the difference between before and after. He said, no, don't laugh. He said, I'm actually interested in what she has to say. And that wasn't true before he came to treatment. And I'm watching it in real time. Do I still think that he's, I won't use the word here, but not a nice person at times? Of course. And I don't mean just like all of us have difficult days. I mean, there's a thread of coldness and difficulty that runs through us, or we wouldn't be able to do to you the things that we do. But we can become aware of it. We can act differently. And yes, that is character change. Will we ever be the person that you might want us to be? I don't know if we'll ever be the person we might want to be, but awareness, communication, and most of all, listening to what you're asking rather than trying to, can you just stop so I can go do what I'm going to do? That all can happen. And that shifts the relationship profoundly. Also, one more thing. If I'm kinder and warmer to you, you're going to be different. You're going to be calmer. It's like a cycle. The more aware and connected I am to you, the more responsive and kinder you're going to be to me. And it goes back and forth. So it is also reinforced by the way I watch you respond to my growth. That's my
Well,
best shot,
and that's
Tammy.
co-regulating, or the opposite, it's co-engaging where everything gets ramped up. So yes, the more we can pay attention, the more we can get out of ourselves. Addiction is highly selfish, highly selfish. We are only focused on, me, 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 like, and even what you're saying, Dr. Rob, about like, how do I convince her? I'm like, yeah, that's all about
Right.
me. I want her convinced so that she'll, whatever,
Well,
and now he's listening to
so I
her.
can feel better.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah,
that was that
absolutely.
if I can just act in a way that will shut her up rather than
Hmm.
if I listen to her, maybe it will change. By the way, I just want to give a real life example. Um, I feel very strongly about meeting Tammy here in a place that is committed to be on time, but I wasn't. I was 5 minutes late. I called her. I said, I'm stuck in front of the garage. I can't get my car to go in. I know this is, well, I texted you. I didn't just decide, well, she'll just, be fine until I get there. I thought about how this would leave her feeling. And so I didn't think about, I don't want to be bothered with this, or maybe I did, but I thought about her and how she might feel. And that I think is what the shift. Do I want to bother reaching out? And no, I'd rather park my car, but I wanted her to feel like I cared and that she mattered. And that wasn't there before recovery. Sorry, I was late, Tim.
Well, no, well, but and that and I was fine. I knew you were doing your best. Like that's different than I'm just going to take care of me and I'll show up when I want to. That's which would be an addict thinking of like, whatever, you actually were
You'll
trying
get
to be on
over it.
time. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like, what's her big deal? So, okay, the next question. This one's from 504. So it's I'm the betrayed partner. D-Day number 3 was a year ago. My sex addict partner is working on the disclosure process with a CSAP. What should I be doing with my own therapist to prepare for therapeutic disclosure or anything else to prepare for it? Any general advice about disclosure you would like to share? Thank you.
Sorry.
You're muted.
I'm
There you
pregnant,
go.
right?
Okay.
I got it. Sorry. So Tammy usually answers this question first, but I actually want to respond to it first, which is,
Yeah.
um, at first, I'm glad you're asking the question because
Yeah.
I think I understand that I would go into disclosure and say, I want to know this. I want to know more. How could you do, not saying that. I want to hear every single thing you've ever done. And I want to make sure that there's 23 questions answered there. And, what I found is that um, if you can just boil your questions down, you know, now you can come up with 30. I sent Tammy a list of 30 things today, but then I said, why don't we boil these down to 5 or 8? And I think that when it's your turn to ask questions, first of all, we can get overwhelmed. To be honest, it's hard enough for us to respond to all of this. And then you're turning to us and saying, what about this? What about that? You're absolutely entitled to, and you should. And I think you will feel more comfortable if you can just narrow down what your 5 or 8 things are into one. And then, because if you come in with 100 questions, you're going to be overwhelmed. They're going to be overwhelmed. So what I would do to prepare for it is I'd make a list. And by the way, to you spouses, I would do it on my pad. It doesn't have to be, I'll sit down and make a list. It can be it's lunchtime and I thought of it, or it's dinner and I thought of it. And by the way, to all you partners, it's not fair to either one of us when something, and partners in particular, something occurs to you. You see a billboard and you're driving down the street and, did you do this? Did you do that? It may be better to write it down and say, tonight, when we talk, I'm going to ask, because when we get peppered and salted with, is that peppered and salt? Peppered with questions, we we'll get more defensive. We will shut down. We will, and then when's the next question going to come? And the last thing I'm going to say, and obviously I've moved on from disclosure, is that, and I really want to say with all compassion to your partners, and I hope you don't feel dismissed, but many of you think if I just get the answer to this question, I will feel better. And the truth is that, and we believe you're like, okay, phew, they're only going to, questions bring up more questions, bring up more questions. And when Tammy talks about regulation, it means calming yourself down, coming from a more peaceful place. When you're asking question after question, you are going to get less and less calm. The questions are going to get bigger and bigger, and they're going to lead down a place neither of you want to go. So, Tam, I know I answered every piece of that, but you might throw a few things in.
Well, so you're working with your therapist. I hope that someone who is qualified, who has been doing these before, they're, like that would be the key to for me, is making sure that they are a qualified professional to be able to support you in all of this. And Dr. Rob is right. I worked with a partner. I was doing a support session with somebody, and they had, I don't remember, I kind of remember 130, 150 questions. We got it down to 3. They all funneled down to those 3. Those 3 were absolutely, must have, the information, but they all boiled down to that. Dr. Rob has said before, if you ask 150 questions, you're going to have 150 more. And it's just relentless. These, like at some point you go, it was bad. There are certain things you want to know, like if it was with somebody, or it was in your house or whatever, like there's some key things for your safety and that you want to know and need to know, and but not gory details. Yeah, I love what Dr. Rob said too about getting peppered with things. No one's in a good place to be able to talk. If you're elevated, you're more likely to be limbic, and your partner's gonna be more likely to be limbic if you're driving in the car and all of a sudden there's attack is on because I saw something, and it's good to know, go like, oh, I saw that billboard and it made me think of a question. Type it in, your phone, send yourself a text, whatever, and then go, yeah, I'm gonna think about that and journal about that. Why is that one important? What's it bringing up for me? Like the more prep work you're doing for this, but key for disclosure, make sure that you have support, that your support person is supportive. You have a plan, you know what it is. I've had partners that felt like they were, like it, that it happened to them rather than it was a process that they were part of. So setting yourself up that way. And I hope soon. Goodness, number 3 was a year ago, and you're still waiting for a disclosure. But like Dr. Rob says too, this is not the be all end all. This is just part of the process. Lots of people don't choose to have a formal therapeutic disclosure. They know it was bad. They see he's working on being different. That's absolutely up to you as a partner. But this is not going to be a magic, oh, now we're going to be, all better. And now I'll be able to heal. Don't wait to heal until, he's done something, because you're always going to be waiting. There's always going to be more. So,
I want to add
okay.
one quick thing.
Sure.
Just because you don't ask the question doesn't mean you have to pretend like everything's okay. You can be sitting there and start to get frustrated and quiet, and I can say to you what's going on. You can say, I got some stuff on my mind related to what's happening. I've been thinking about it. We're going to talk about it. Don't hide and pretend everything's fine, because
Right.
that's
Oh,
not a
yeah, I
good
agree
thing.
with you. Yeah. Yeah.
But you don't have to ask the question for us to see that you're clearly in a bad place, and we need to just give you that space. So, Tammy, you have so many questions. I love the
I
next one, by
know.
the way.
1 year since D-Day, 3 separation, or third separation, or since D-Day number 3, separation from husband, PA. He sought a non-CSAT therapist and just joined a smart recovery group. He rejects 12-step because they label people as addicts. While acknowledges his addiction will need lifelong management, he says, not who he is. Should I be concerned about his reluctance to identify as an addict? Is smart a viable 12-step alternative?
Well, I think that many years ago we would have said that's the only way. You got to do the steps. You got to do 12-step. I think that there are people who find other paths that maybe work better for them. I do smart recovery is a meaningful thing. It is something that people use. And I'll tell you what, an addict is not who I am. It is a deep part of my struggle and my flaws. So I really have to see, what, and Tam will say this, what are you seeing? Are you seeing this person be more open and be more compassionate? Do you get a sense that they are really, do you see their commitment to going to these meetings? I am a little worried that it's all out of alignment. If I were going to see a CSAT and I said, and a CSAT is a certified sex addiction therapist, and I've done some teaching there. We are certified. We spend a long time training and working in this area. You really do want to see someone who understands how this works, for many, many reasons. For I can't even begin, but understand that you want. So if he said, I'm seeing a regular therapist, but I'm going to those 12-step meetings. Or if he said, I'm seeing someone who's really well trained in this and I feel more comfortable in those meetings. But my concern is just a sort of blanket dismissal of the process in the way that at least I've seen it work. So, I would feel uncomfortable too. I don't think it's necessarily it has to be this or it has to be that, but there does need to be something that is meaningfully understanding of what he and you were dealing with. So, Tammy, you may disagree. I know that, but
No. I like, and it isn't honestly about uh disagreeing. It's you know what my sticking point was? Uh it was the um he's like, and it doesn't I don't care, like smart recovery. I don't know, my thought was I think they're only like once a week. If they're multiple times a week, and if he's really leaning into the journey and you are seeing him make progress, my concern is it's a year since D-Day separation. He sought a non-CSAT therapist, so I like that's my biggie thing is, so he's picking through things. Most non-CSAT trained therapists are not trained in addiction, so even if he goes, I'm not an addict and all that kind of stuff, like for me, I'm either an addict or I'm off the charts nuts, because like I was doing compulsive behaviors that made absolutely no sense, even with negative consequences over and over again. I don't know what else you call it. So for me, the term addict was super helpful, because it was like, oh, okay, and here's what you can do to do things differently. So to me, I'm more concerned about, like, he's picking a couple of things, and but is he really leaning into them? Is he changing? Do you see a change, or do you hear like lots of defensiveness and unwillingness to do something that might actually help him change more meaningfully? And then my bigger thing for you is, what are your healthy boundaries about this? Like, you're separated. I don't know, I hope that you've done that with the help of qualified professionals. So there's a plan, for what does reunification look like if you do, because just separating with no plan is just separating, and you can be separated for a long time and be kind of left in limbo. So I'm hoping you guys have a plan, and I really hope you're taking care of you regardless of what he's doing or not doing. So, okay.
there is one other thing that comes to
Yes.
mind. I do think that smart recovery is useful for many people, and I think you should look it up. SMART. There are meetings at various times in various places, but the one thing that came up for me, and I don't have the time or the focus. I want to focus on you guys. Are there specific groups for specific issues? Because if I'm meeting with people who abuse alcohol, no, and I'm not saying addicted. If I work with people if the group is for people who abuse alcohol, and for the people who has a problem with gambling, and for the person who has a sex problem, trust me, I'm not going to talk about it, because I already know, excuse my language, I'm the pervert in the room. If someone says I have an alcohol problem, someone else says I have a gambling problem, and I say I'm compulsively masturbating, well, how open do you think I can be? And so I would say one of the things is I would really want to know, whatever kind of group this person's going to, is it specific to that issue? Otherwise, we're not going to talk about it. We're going to minimize it, and it's not going to have the same effect, because we won't find our like people. Is addictive behavior similar, from where it comes from emotionally, what drives it? Absolutely. But the behaviors are profoundly different, and who we need to relate to is profoundly different. And to me, that seems like the most important part. So that's it for me.
Okay. So we're going to go to 510. I'm 3 months out of D-Day. I'm trying to find support, or I'm trying to support my spouse in his recovery. You're 3 months out of D-Day? Oh, wow. How can I do that? Is it possible for him to change his thinking? How can a sex addict truly recover? What does it require from them? And how can I support that as a wife?
I'm going to let you start
I
that
was going to
one.
say,
And
you heard my, oh, wow, you're 3 months out. Let's change the focus. what are you doing to support yourself? How are you getting help, to support your healing? That's for him to do. You not leaving him is huge support, and I'm not being snarky or anything else. It's like you staying in the relationship, that gives him a space holder. So you like, to me, this is, what are you doing to take care of yourself? You've been betrayed. It's been 3 months since D-Day. Like, this is all about, what do you need for you? He knew all along he was, doing all this stuff. I said it earlier, for however long we're acting out, we know what we're doing. And then a partner has discovery, so to me, this is that, yes, we would not do this work if we did not believe in recovery. Absolutely. So yes, we know lots of people who absolutely, are on a recovery journey. We don't become perfect people, but we can be on that. And that is our responsibility. If you want to be supportive, like when he says he needs to go to his 12-step meeting, bye, see you later. I mean, just giving him the space to do that. And I am a big 12-stepper. So, but whatever group, but we don't do this on our own. And no partner, can help their person enough. It kind of keeps them, in a childlike position, because you're doing all of the work, and then we get resentful, and that's a whole nother ball of wax. But it's one of those things where, what are you doing to take care of you? I put the betrayed partner work group that started last week. You could still join that. I hope you're going to the drop-in groups, for free drop-in groups for betrayed partners. And guess what? There's complimentary things for him to be doing as well. The more work he is choosing to do for his recovery, the faster you will start to see changes. But I would so encourage you to go, I'm going to take care of me, and I'm he can come to our website. We have a zillion resources. If he's confused, we'll help
And
him.
that website is called?
www.seekingintegrity.com.
Thanks. I wanted
Okay.
to make sure that.
Yes.
Um, um, so I was reading this question. I thought the best, and I think this sort of Tammy said it, the best thing that you can do is take care of yourself, is to find a place to come from, which is not, my healing and my comfort and my stability depends on what he says or doesn't say. There has to be some place, some beginning place, where no matter what is said, no matter what has happened, that you can be okay with you. And that means having connections, having support, really feeling, I'm ready to hear this. Good or bad, right or wrong, it's never going to be perfect, but I'm in a place to be able to come to peace with this for myself. The other thing is, and I was just mentioned about disclosure. I meant to say this earlier. Tammy mentioned a plan for those of you doing disclosure. What are you going to do after? You're going to drive in a car together, or are you not? Are you going to stay in the same house, or is he going to stay with a friend? I think even planning to the point where you understand the concrete nature of how you're, and by the way, I wouldn't suggest having dinner, that you each take some space, and that you don't feel obligated to, got to go home and do this, got to drive, just the simplest things.
Or get in the same car,
And what are you going to do? And I also always encourage that the next day or the day after, you really go back to that professional and you talk about what's happened. But, and this goes to both questions, have a friend who picks you up after, go to dinner with them, go to your support group, make sure that you are focused on you and not them, because we're crazy people. Yeah. And and we lie, and we want, we do all kinds of crazy stuff. And if you're looking to us for your stability, you're not going to find it there, unfortunately. Not, yeah. And you have to find your own in some way. Yeah, let's keep going.
Well, just one more thing to this. If you think you can do enough to get him on a path so everything's going to be okay, that doesn't work. You can't make him get recovery. You can't babysit him through that. It really is. We have to be willing to do that. Dr. Rapp says it all the time about, clients who come to our residential program. He can work with anything if they're willing, so, and if they're not, like, you then again save yourself. So, but I hope he is choosing it. But yeah, like, okay, so on 511, sometimes when I have sex with my husband, I'm scared that I'm feeding his addiction. If we are being too dirty, I am concerned. Should we only have vanilla sex, because I don't want to be his addict partner, but his wife? There's so much here for the clinical sexologist in you. So,
Well, I mean, there's a lot of information that we don't know, and I understand that this isn't probably the place to talk about it.
mm.
Um, but I have a couple of things. I don't know um, what sex versus vanilla sex. I know what vanilla sex is, and by the way, that's sort of, what would you say? I don't want to use the word traditional. It's sex without kink. It's sex without um, leather. It's sex without tying someone up. It's sex without. It is. I don't want to demean or make anyone feel bad by saying normal, but I would say it's traditional sexuality, as you might think about it. So some people enjoy certain things. And by the way, I don't want to conflate the fact that someone's turned on by um, being hit with I don't know. I don't, here we go. I don't want to conflate that someone likes to be spanked with that means that they're addicted. Some people have different kinds of arousal, and that isn't right or wrong, and it isn't necessarily part of an addiction. So let's take that part out. Let's say if we're being sexual, am I concerned that I am contributing to this addiction? You know, do I feel safe around being sexual without worrying? If I'm thinking, first of all, no, well, let me go back here. There's nothing you can do to contribute to anybody's addiction. If he feels uncomfortable, he can say, I want to stop. If he feels uncomfortable, he can go to the person he works with and say, you know, this happened and I don't feel good about it. There is nothing you can do. By the way, if he feels triggered, he can make all kinds of decisions to get support for himself. So there is nothing that you can do to make or encourage someone to act out. I don't care what kind of sex you have. Um, what's important is that you don't take on that responsibility. Now, if you don't feel comfortable for you, not focusing on, well, this affect him or this, he's going to do whatever he's going to want. If he wants to drink, he's going to drink. If you have, no, I'm not saying keep the wine in the house, but I do think it's important for you to leave yourself in a place where you feel safe and you are not responsible. Now, by the way, I would say, have you run this by the people that you're getting support from? Have you talked to your therapist about it? Have you talked to your support group? And I'm going to say something kind of intimate, but when I first was in early recovery, I made a commitment that if I was going to have sex with my partner, I had to call my sponsor first and I had to say, this is okay. We've talked about it. I'm going to have this happen and I'm going to call you the next morning and see how I feel. So what we call bookended it with not your responsibility, but is it okay? Do you think I should try this out, being sexual with my partner? Yes, I do. And I want to hear from you in the morning about how it left you feeling, because there isn't a right or a wrong. There is a, how do I manage it? What kind of support do I have for it? And by the way, saying, and I'll just stop here, saying, if I do this, will they do that, is controlling. You can't control what I'm going to do. You cannot control it. I can make my own decisions on my own. And if I struggle with it, I can manage it on my own. So take that responsibility off for yourself. Focus on what makes you feel comfortable. I do think it's okay to say, well, do you have support if we do this and it affects you? How are you going to take care of yourself? Because I don't want to feel uncomfortable. I think those are the kinds of things that I'd be asking. I know, Tammy, do you have other feedback?
The only thing you said with, tell the person you work with, and I want to make sure you understand that's not your coworker, that's your therapist or your sponsor. Because I thought, please don't misinterpret that you're going to go talk to somebody at work about this. This is, you
Oh, I
talk to your
didn't mean,
therapist. No, you
I
said
mean
the
someone
person
you're
you work with.
working on
Exactly.
in
Yeah.
your
Yes.
healing.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Yes. Yes.
clarifying. No,
Yeah.
I'm
But
not
I was
going to
just, I
talk to
caught that and I was like,
the
I'm
person
not
I
going
am
to
a
talk to my
secretary.
coworker
Gee, what
about
do you
this.
think?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
No, but yes. And you know what? The most vulnerable and intimate thing is communication. If you were talking to your husband about this and say, I am fearful of this, can we talk about this? Wow, what an amazing and vulnerable, intimate thing, And then he can say, you guys can have a time out if something's getting, it can be we're going to stop in the moment, So, that may help allay your fears, but I'm with Dr. Rob. It's like I don't think of sex as dirty. I think of it as there's lots of different variations and whatever's working for two, mutual people, it's all good. So, okay. My PA husband does not look at me when I'm talking to him. He either closes his eyes or looks down. Is this part of escapism or addiction?
I think addiction in general is escapism. You know, as a whole, it is about disappearing into something that I have control over, and or at least I feel like I have control over, rather than focusing on someone I care about, which can be difficult for me on a bunch of levels. The number one thing I hear from partners, and this is an extreme of that, but the number one concern I hear from partners is we're not intimate. We don't relate. You're not listening to me. You're not curious. You don't take time. So this is a sort of, I guess, extreme example of disconnection. And when I don't relate, when I don't intimate with you, it basically means I check out, I go somewhere else. So I don't, if you said this happens before sex, after sex, I would say, well, that might be something to do with addiction. But just listening to this as a therapist, I hear trauma, I hear fear, I hear, and what comes up for me, for example, is, and this is maybe completely wrong, but every time I looked that parent in the eye and they thought I was, being rude, they yelled at me, or I don't know how he learned, but to me, this feels like much more of a psychological problem. And maybe the extreme expression of it is sexual acting out. And the other thing is, I really discourage you from taking it personally. I would feel so like, I'm just talking to you. Why are you looking away? Or don't you care about me? Or if you cared about me, I don't think, if you feel that there's love and affection and caring in other parts of relationship, I would say that this is someone who is struggling with their fears or challenges with. And it may simply be, that they have some psychological issue, like they're on the spectrum, which means when they're in a social environment, they disappear. Or so I guess what I'm really saying is I think that further diagnosis is needed. I wouldn't necessarily just go to a therapist. I would go to someone who's skilled in evaluate, someone who's been at this for a while, someone who works both. And one of the things we do in our treatment program is we don't just look at sex. And we don't just look at the alcohol, the drugs. We look at the emotional health of the person. What have they been through? That's part of the point of residential treatment is we have the time and the space. The other people in group will say, gee, you don't look at me when you're, or the female therapist, you seem to look down. Part of a residential treatment is digging into those little pieces. And believe me, we'll figure out on some level how it is that they're so afraid or whatever that is that they look away. I don't know what it is, but I would say it's kind of like saying they're depressed all the time. Does that mean that's part of their addiction? Maybe. When I acted out, I felt shameful. I hated myself. I felt awful. When I stopped acting out, I felt better about myself. But this may be something that is separate. And as the therapist in me says, you're right to question it. You're right to be curious, but I'm not there. There's something else going on because there's what 56 people in this room, and I bet most of the spouses don't have that particular experience. Now, Tammy, do you want to add to that?
I'm so curious about this one. I was like, does he do it with other people? Is it
Mm.
when you're having a difficult conversation, and I actually went to the, like, does he need to block out stimuli in order to hear? Like, and I
Mhm.
don't know. Like, so I with
Right.
Dr. Rob, like getting getting a better getting a more specialized professional to help with this. I mean, I mean, you can even say, I've noticed that you don't look at me. Is that something we could try? Would it be helpful if I hold your hand or whatever? Or is that way just too much?
Well, actually, I thought of perhaps a less formal way is that this
Okay.
is a couples therapy issue. This
Oh,
is when
that's a
you
good
can
one.
sit in a room together and say, and stare and look at each other. Sometimes couples therapy, you never even look at the therapist. You're looking at each other and we're observing. They might say, the therapist might say, gee, I noticed when she did this, you did that. I wonder what you were feeling. So there may be, and I think good therapy in real time, look at what's going on in the
Yeah,
interaction.
that's a great
Are
idea.
you, I'll give you another example really quick. When a couple comes to see me, do they sit on the couch together or do they sit at either end? Does one take the chair? And because it tells me a lot about where they are. Do they lean together? Do they lean away? When I do consultations, and by the way, I do 2-hour consultations where I sit with couples and we really get under what do you need to do next? I'm a diagnostic. I am there to say, with everything I hear, this is what I think would be helpful. And I have to say, most of the time, it's saying to the addict, what are you thinking? But nonetheless, there's a lot that those of us who are good at what we do can observe without people even saying a word. This is,
Mhm.
I kind of like this answer. This is a great opportunity in real time to play this out and figure out what it is.
Yeah, I love that answer. Okay.
Thank you.
I'm in my 20s and have been together with my spouse for less than a decade. Wait, I'm in my okay, gotcha. And my for less than a decade and married just a few years ago. No kids. I'm wondering, should I get out now? Our entire relationship has been a string of affairs from his side, as well as porn addiction. He is an SA now and has a sponsor. How do I know if I should stay or run away now before I bring kids into this mess? I'm going to pull up. We did a four-part webinar series on
Right.
should I stay or should I go? And I mean, it's very useful. I think it will be educational and help you. But we did a four-part series. One was like 10 questions, and you can journal about those. Like, do I even like them? That's one of them. But there, and then the next one was a partner that stayed, a partner that left. The next one was about divorce mediation, and the next one was about the legal system. So I think you will find those. But you know what I was thinking, Dr. Rob, you just mentioned your expert consultations. This feels like one that would be really helpful for a
Oh, yeah.
consultation,
That's
yeah,
why I
as
brought it
well.
up.
So yeah.
I
Oh,
mean,
you saw the question in advance.
well,
Okay,
I wanted
sorry.
to answer something about this, which
Please,
is
I'm pulling this up
when I
now.
work with, and this is just the way the world works. When I'm working with a couple in their 20s and 30s, and they're just really at my age, I can say starting out, especially if you don't have kids, this is really where a spouse has an opportunity to say, do I want to do this? And I got to tell you, you're going to do, this is your entire marriage. This is not going away. I have this problem. Now I'm not saying, do I want to marry someone with cancer? I mean, we're not talking about that kind of question. We're talking about, do I want to live with and manage this kind of emotional questioning and fear the rest of my married life? And the other thing, so I do think because you're at an age where you can say, maybe I want to try a different relationship. Maybe I don't have to, um, maybe there are other things there for me and I can try that out. What I see with couples that are more my age, which is they've been together 40 years and they have kids, they have houses, they have school, they have work, they have family, they have church, they have years and years of building something. And I got to tell you, in my 60s, as Tammy said earlier, the last thing I want to do is say, oh my God, I want to start all over again. So, and besides, we have all these ties. When I've been with someone for such a long time, I know so much more about you, and I know that you are not just this. Um, However, it is a lot easier to say, I'm not sure I want to get into this and make better choices if that's what works for you, realizing that if you're in it, it's not good. The questioning, the challenge, the brokenness that he is going through, that you're going to be living with that your entire marriage. And when you're 60 or whatever, you kind of say, well, I don't want to give up. What did I have? I had a woman say in group, I love this. She said, I'm not going to give up everything I have because he screws up. I'm not going to give up my home, my family. I'm not going to break up my whole life because he screws up. That's an older person who has an entire life with this person who's really questioning that. So I think I also think that this would be a good therapy question, a good couples therapy question. Again, you need to sit in a room with him. I assume it's a him and say, I'm doubting a relationship. I don't know what this is going to be like. This is really a time, and I can't tell you how important it is to me that you're evaluating it, that you're not jumping in the pit of, oh, it's love, and that means everything's going to work out. And looking at this realistically and taking stock of what can happen and what your future may be, and what do you want to have children with this person? What would that mean? So you're asking the right question. I am proud of you. I don't have the answer. I do agree with you that now is a time you can say, I'm not sure before kids come along, before there's a whole history. But Tammy, do you mind if we go a little bit over since we started late, or can you do that?
No, that's okay. And so you can look at
Okay.
the next few. I've been
Okay.
popping some links in, and you can look at the non-answered too. So
Oh,
why don't you pick one that you want
I
to,
wanted to say one more, which is
please?
I do a podcast, which I think we've had 1.5 million downloads or something like. We just did one. We had 4,000 downloads. I thought we did it last week. There is at least one, I'm sure of it, Tammy, that says, should I stay or should I go? I'm sure we did a podcast about that. And if you go through the resources you're going to do, I'm sure I did, Tammy. You're going to find that there. Um,
Yes.
we don't have all the answers, of course, but it gives you thoughts, things to reflect on, to think about outside of what you're dealing with. Go ahead, Tammy.
So at the bottom of the open ones, he claims he looks down in order to hear. He also does it in groups. I honestly wondered about that because, like, if you get sensory overload,
Right.
closing your eyes or looking down could be. I'm not saying that that's what he's doing, but like I think that's interesting. So
So actually, I want to add something to that,
please.
and I don't think he'd mind my saying it. My husband has he can speak 6 languages, and he can whip around a computer, he can put them together and take them apart. He has a little bit, I would say he's somewhat on the spectrum, which means he's more able, his brain works differently than mine does, for sure. Um, one of the things that I learned is when he would come home and he would go in our bedroom and close the door. Now, I grew up with a mother who went in her room whenever and was depressed and stayed in bed and turned the lights off. So you can imagine my husband of 20 years or whatever it is, I'm ready to come, they're coming home and I'm ready to have a conversation. What's going on? And he disappears for an hour. What I learned about this particular issue is some people get so stimulated during the day that they need a few minutes to or half an hour just to come back, and then they can be present for me. But the world can be overwhelming, especially if you're someone who kind of can take a piece at a time. So when I hear it's universal, I think I wonder what's going on socially and relationally that is pervasive, not just about you. So lots of questions, not a lot of answers, but this is a professional issue to deal with. I think the last one or the 521, is that something we could do?
Yes, sometimes I feel like I should leave my husband, that one,
Yeah.
because of all the affairs. I feel like there's nothing left for me in this marriage. My husband has started working on his program, but I don't know why I should stay at this point. He never valued or respected me in so many ways. Do sex addicts in recovery deserve a chance?
Mm.
But it says do sex addicts in recovery. And that's very different than active addiction. I feel like I've already given him a million chances over the years.
Well, we don't know what, I don't know when you say is in recovery, does that mean 6 months, 6 years? So Tammy, I actually want you to start with this because I have so many ways of thinking about this and I'd love you to narrow it for us.
Okay, so I put in the should I stay or should I go? And, because again, I just mentioned that, but here's the deal. If we're really doing the work, I know so many
Mm.
people who are in active recovery and we are amazing people. I mean, I love because we have to be more self
Conscious.
examined. Yes. Yeah, we have to pay attention in order to be congruent. We can't let ourselves, do all of these other things that so-called normal people, can do. So in real recovery, and we did a webinar on that because it kept coming up. So I actually did a whole webinar on that earlier this month, what real recovery is and isn't. So you can go kind of see recovery takes 2 to 5 years. Not everybody can hang in there and do that. And yeah, I'm always going to be, and I identify as an addict. I will be an addict in active recovery rather than an active addiction. But it doesn't mean it just magically goes away. I don't ever use the term recovered. I don't like it because that would give me a false sense of like, oh, I'm all done. I'm not. There's always room for growth. And I'm willing to do the growth, which is why we are, constantly growing and changing, and so but that does not mean you should stay. I mean, like this is the long haul. And you said I've already given him a million chances over the years, so from his standpoint, what would he be doing now that would be different than what he's been doing, over the last bunch of years? I think that's more telling for you is what is he doing that makes you think this time might actually be different? That would be really meaningful for me. And we talk all the time about journaling. I would invite you to journal about, what is that? What do you truly want? And it can't be, well, I want him not to be an addict. That train, left the station. So
Yeah.
yeah, so here's what you have. This is the reality right now. He's an addict. If he's really doing the recovery work and he's making good traction, can you put the relationships in safe harbor for 60 days and just kind of go, I'm going to wait and see what he's doing and take that off your list right now, just for the moment, and give yourself some space to kind of contemplate and see what he's doing and see what you think. But otherwise, if you're going like, yeah, it's the same old, you don't, why would you want to stay with someone who's, continually breaking your heart? Now, there are some partners who choose to stay with an active addict for lots of reasons, sometimes financial, but sometimes they can get over the, well,
Kids.
this is really bad,
Mm.
but most of it's really good. So there's zero judgment. It absolutely has to be your decision. So
Well, I always look for something in a question like this that strikes me in particular. And the thing that struck me was in so many ways. That is more what I'm concerned about. it's not, and I'll say this, I hear this all the time. It isn't just the lying, it isn't just the cheating, it isn't just the sex. It's the way we relate. It's the way we connect. It's the way I feel valued or not. So what and I love Tammy, invite you to do, I love that you say that. I agree with you. I would sit down and I would say, what do I want in a relationship? What has meaning to me? Have we had this? Have I experienced this? I don't think it's necessarily about what has happened because we adapt and we adapt and we adapt. And before you know it, it is just what it is. But what is it you really want in a relationship? The other thing, and Tammy said this also, it doesn't have to be black or white. It doesn't have to be I'm leaving or I'm staying. There are a lot of steps. I can separate. We can take time out. We can just, date for a while and we can not talk for a period of time. Um, I think that, I think that it can be very difficult to answer that black and white question, but there are a lot of ways that are things in between. I do want to say something to all you spouses before we stop. This is really, really, really important to me. And I know this will be hard for a lot of you. If you say something, mean it. I want you to hear this. If you say to me as an addict, if you do this again, or if that happens again, or whatever that is, and you say, I'm going to leave you, and this isn't necessarily this question, but it comes up for me. If you say to me, I'm going to leave you, if this happens, you better be ready to leave. Because if you don't, there's a part of me that says, oh, well, they say it and they don't mean it. So I can do this, and I guess I'm just going to get away with it. Please be careful about what you say. We are listening. And if you mean it within yourself that you're not going to tolerate this and you're going to leave or move on or whatever that is, please do that. Otherwise, say, I'd like to leave you. I'm thinking about leaving you. I don't think I could do this. But to say, I'm going to do this, that kind of declarative statement, we listen and we listen carefully. And boy, if we get away with it as an addict, that is permission to keep tromping over you because you're not going to protect yourself no matter what you say. Boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Tammy, I have to say, I love working with you, and I'll tell you why. Because you come up with a part I didn't say, and I come up with a part that you didn't say. And that is really, I'm never bored. You're hopefully not. So
No,
anyway,
I'm not. I honestly, I do too. And thank you guys for showing up. Obviously we enjoy each other's company and, we appreciate the questions. And I'm so sorry we didn't get to all of them. I've been frantically typing resources wherever I could. But come back, Aaron will be here next week, but Dr. Rob will be back in 2 weeks. So bring your questions. And Troy Love will be on Wednesday. So join us there. And John Taylor is on Thursday. So we've got a bunch of
one last thing.
resources.
All of this, almost all of it is in a podcast. Can you tell them what it's called?
Well, no, so there's a podcast, Sex, Love, and Addiction. And then
Right.
some of these webinars are in Overcoming Betrayal and Addiction. They're on
Overcoming betrayal and addiction is where
yes,
you hear the two of us
yeah.
doing this. Not
And you can
everyone.
get them on your platform. Yeah, but I've added some others like Dr. Eddie
Right.
Caparucci's on, Debbie McCrae. So there's a bunch of different things. Check them out. There's a lot of great resources.
But don't
And you
forget
can
about
find them
us.
all. Yeah, you can find them all on our website. We have links to everything. You know what, Dr. Rob? These are all posted on our website, the videos, and lots of people go and listen or watch the videos. And I haven't added it all up, but I know we've got at least 3,000 hours of recorded videos
I'm
from
tired.
all the different things over the years, with
Um,
all of
I
them. So
I want to say one more thing, which is you may hear this podcast. You may think, wow, that's something that I want my husband or wife to hear. I have seen that a lot, oh, this one I want them to hear. Sit in the car and listen to it. It's so much easier than, just listen. And you can never learn enough about all of these issues or otherwise 3,000 hours. Boy, would that be boring. Tammy,
it would be, but like that's why I know like this one was on 2/7/24, and this one I know some of the dates of the. I made a blog about should I stay or should I go. So like we've tried to have them somewhat organized, but we're working on it. So thank you, Dr. Rob. It was great to see you. Thanks
have a
for
great evening.
navigating the
Thank you for
garage.
tolerating my lateness, Tammy. Bye for
All
now.
right, talk to you later. Bye bye.